circumstances that he faced, and yet we see a man who stood firm on his belief in God and his practice in regards to the principles that God had set forth for him to be able to exhibit before others. And we're grateful for a man like Joseph, and I hope that you've taken that challenge this past week in order to allow the Lord to enable you to stand firm no matter what has come your way. We talked about renewing our walk with the Lord. We talked about remaining close to His voice at all times. We talked about refraining from all pride and self-promotion and rising to the challenge of serving Him. And brethren, we're blessed today with that opportunity and that privilege to be able to serve the Lord. And as it said maybe in the Scriptures, to serve the Lord for such a time as this. To be able to live in this day and age, at this particular time, in this particular area, in order to represent our Savior, Jesus Christ. And I know that we've all had those fantasies, those dreams about, man, if we only could have lived back in the 1600s or the 1700s or the 1800s or the 1900s. And some of you going, no, I'm good with where I'm at, like... some of the things that they didn't have that I have, I don't think I could have lived without. And I understand that as well, all right? However, where God has put us is right here, right now. And so I have that concept of standing firm in a crumbling society. But let's look at Daniel chapter 6 here this morning. We're going to take kind of another aspect, something similar, and yet a little different here. Daniel chapter 6 verse 3, the Bible says this, then Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes because, and you notice these next two words here, an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Today I want to talk about this idea, having an excellent spirit in an unworthy environment. Having an excellent spirit in an unworthy environment. Let's pray and let's ask the Lord once again to meet with us here this morning, to allow us to understand the excellent spirit that Daniel had and that Daniel displayed, and something that we also can obtain. Father, we're so grateful for your love to us. We're so grateful for the salvation that you have provided us with. Certainly as we sung the song, How Great You Are, we know that to be true. And when we think of what the Lord Jesus Christ did for us, when He went to the cross and when He suffered and when He bled, when He gave His life, so our sins could be forgiven, so we can have a right relationship with you. Father, there's so many things in this world that really do not matter in comparison to that great salvation that you have given to us. Lord, help us today as we study the life of Daniel, as we recognize the environment that he was placed in, and yet how he was able to thrive through that environment, how he was able to demonstrate and to maintain an excellent spirit. And Lord, I know that we live in a day and we live in a society, we live in times where certainly we can see some of the unworthiness that is happening and some of the evil and wickedness that is taking place. And yet, Lord, I know that it's your desire that we remain true to you, that we stand firm, and Lord, that we continue to be able to demonstrate who you are to those around us. And one way we can do that is through this excellent spirit. Give us insight, wisdom, guidance, and direction today. Help me, Lord, to be able to communicate the things that you want communicated. And this we ask in Jesus' name, amen. Certainly several Old Testament individuals have demonstrated for us the ability to serve the Lord in seemingly evil environment. And this evil environment is one that we can see in so many different ways. Sometimes it's in a very a widespread scale. Sometimes it's in a very major situation, major scenario, kind of like the citizen of a country or even a resident of this state. We would say that that is an environment that is huge, it's big, that involves a lot of people. But we also know that that comes down to what we would say even in our personal circles. In small scales, and just a few people, maybe a medium-sized group of people. Sometimes, and some of you actually have to experience this because of the job that you work at. You are in an unworthy environment, if you will. You are pushed and prodded, and you are subject to many just ungodly situations and ungodly scenarios. And I know it used to be the verbiage of being in the construction trade. Anytime you were in the construction trade, you had to put up with a lot of nonsense because of the colorful language and expressions and just the roughness of the individuals that you were around. But what I have seen and what I've experienced and heard is now we're seeing some of that same kind of thing in all areas and in all environments. And maybe where there used to be certain standards in workplaces, those standards are quickly being lost and depleted. And so you're finding yourself even in some of those other kind of jobs, an unworthy environment. Maybe it's as a family member when you get around some extended family, or even maybe in the home that you live in, you're experiencing some very negative environments, unworthy environments that's difficult for you to be able to remain true and strong in your Christian walk with the Lord. And maybe it's not in your direct home, maybe it's once you get around the extended family, so to speak, and you find yourself in those situations. Maybe it's certain of the association groups or friend groups that you have that you find yourself in, that they're doing things that are less than godly, not necessarily desiring to hear the Bible or to respond to the Bible. Obviously, we know when we get around the lost, we're to expect that unworthy environment. Maybe it's in a sports scenario situation. I know that I experienced some interesting things just being part of coaching staff, or being in a group in a situation of football or baseball or things of that sort. We're around other people who are not necessarily church goers, and though they try to watch themselves being around a pastor, that doesn't always hold true. And so what do we see? We see that there's a need for us to have an excellent spirit in these unworthy environments. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 27, he that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. And so we see the opportunities that Daniel had and Daniel experienced. We also see that truth resonating throughout the scriptures and throughout many places where we connect the idea of the difficulty and the negative, ungodly scenario that we have to find ourselves living in and being a part of. Daniel it's mentioned a couple of other times of his excellent spirit that he had in verse 12 of Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5 and verse 12, it says, "For as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, who the king named Belshazzar, and now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation." And we see that, again, this excellent spirit that many people are taking note of. When you try to define it, I'm going to tell you right now, it's a little difficult to really define the idea of excellent and the idea of spirit. For one, we see so many things about the word spirit in the Bible, and there are many different references. This particular Hebrew word that is used for Daniel's excellent spirit, that Hebrew word of spirit, is actually only found in the book of Daniel. And so it's kind of unique to this book, but there's other words used, or another word used for spirit in the Old Testament. But the idea of excellent is being of great virtue or worth. It's distinguished. It's valuable. It's laudable. It's kind of that idea when somebody would say an excellent man or citizen, an excellent judge or magistrate. You're describing somewhat of the character of that individual. You're describing their demeanor. You're trying to bring out the fact that they seem to be unique or different and excelling with the way that they can keep control, if you will, over who they are and the spirit, the attitude that they reflect. When we talk about spirit, we talk about the soul of the man. And sometimes the word soul is used interchangeable with spirit. Sometimes there's a little bit of difference in those terms. And you got to look very carefully when you read that in the scriptures. But the soul of the man, we talk about also the aspect of the intelligence or the immaterial or immortal part of human beings. Part of the reason it's so difficult to describe is because it's one of those things we can't really see. It's one of those things we can't x-ray, we can't put a CAT scan on it, we can't go inside and physically do something to it because, it's just immaterial. But we know exists. In fact, the Hebrew word spirit is also used interchangeable with wind. And wind is very similar in the aspects of you can't see it, but you notice the effects of it. You notice the results of wind. If we have a huge windstorm come through, you're going to be able to tell, even after you don't feel the wind anymore, you're going to be able to say, man, it must have really got windy here. Kind of like yesterday a little bit, right before some of the storms came through, and you're driving down the driveway and it's littered with leaves everywhere. Well, those leaves didn't just all of a sudden appear. The wind came through and blew and the leaves came down. There's a visual effect to something that I can't see or necessarily put my hand on. What's kind of the part of that spirit that is within us, that immaterial intelligent substance. It's if you will, a substance in which thinking, knowing, doubting, and even a power of moving do subsist. That's what's going on here within each and every one of us. Our spirit, whether you're tired or not, is working. And I know sometimes you say, my mind is not quite connecting, okay? And that plays with it, right? My soul. But there is the spirit within you that is being exhibited 24/7, all the time. Whenever you are out and doing things around people, even around the Lord, just you and Him, your spirit is communicating. And we need to desire that we would have an excellent spirit. An excellent spirit. I want you to think just for a moment how you would define that. Think of somebody that you have taken note of that you would say, man, that individual really does have an excellent spirit. Someone that I would enjoy being around, or someone that I would want to go to for counsel or for advice, or someone that I would consider would be godly in their mannerisms and would be exhibiting godliness. Someone that and how would you describe them? How would you what kind of definition would you give to that? And then think about your own heart, your own life, your own spirit. Would people be able to describe you in that same manner? Would they be able to say, you are of an excellent spirit? Now, it would seem with Daniel that this excellent spirit kind of also correlated with wisdom and knowledge and understanding and intelligence and discernment and things of that sort. And I believe that that's part of what God blessed Daniel with, and part of what helped him to be able to really exhibit and achieve that aspect of an excellent spirit. But listen, don't think just because you don't have a college degree or a PhD or a doctorate, just don't think that that means you can't be of an excellent spirit. Because when the Lord is at work, it goes beyond just physical information that we may learn and we may know. wisdom is something that is granted by God. Let's talk first this morning about the prevention of an excellent spirit. The prevention of an excellent spirit. And thankfully, from the example that we have with Daniel, Daniel wasn't prevented from an excellent spirit. In fact, the Bible is very clear that Daniel had an excellent spirit. And it was noticed early on. But there's things that could have happened, or that there's things that Daniel could have allowed that would have prevented him from being described in that manner. The first one today is bitterness. Bitterness. Daniel, like Joseph and like many others, was taken captive by the enemy, the Babylonian army. And look back to Daniel chapter 1, and we see here, verse 1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. So in other words, Nebuchadnezzar didn't necessarily defeat them. God gave them into his hand. He used Nebuchadnezzar as a point of consequence, as a point of judgment for the nation of Judah. And so they were delivered as captives. They were now under the control of Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar. And so it says, part of the vessels of the house of God were which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels unto the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Aspenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. And he goes on, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, of whom they might teach the learning of the tongue of the Chaldeans. And this is where we find in verse 6, among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel and his 3 friends taken captive in this siege by Babylon. Now, why is that significant? Well, if you think about it, Daniel could have gotten bitter at the Babylonians. I'm sure they walked in there and they said, hey guys, can we please take you over? I'm sure they walked in there and just said, in the nicest manner and as polite as they possibly can, listen, we want to take control of your kingdom. Is that all right with you guys? And no, okay, now it's all right with you. All right, so, and in the process of that, can we have like the best of the best? And we want to take them back with us. And we want to treat them really well. And we want to use their lives and reward them for, because they are so, that is not the way it occurred. In fact, if you have any doubt about that, just read about Nebuchadnezzar a little bit and you'll understand some of his ways and his methods. I mean, even the fiery furnace, right, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to face. It says there in that particular chapter that Nebuchadnezzar's visage was changed. He got so angry. He was never used to being told no. And so you can imagine Judah saying no and Nebuchadnezzar responding the way he did. But so he goes in there and by force, they take these people. By force, they diminish the kingdom of Judah. By force, they overtake them, and then they're creating tribute to them and or tribute on them and all the other things that go along with it. And how do you feel when people want to come in and take your stuff? Government included, right? I'm sure every one of you, when you get to write your taxes bill or pay your taxes, or when you look at your paycheck stub and you realize what they took out for taxes, every one of you going, yes! The government just took 30% of my check. I am so grateful that they are doing, oh, please. If you're like that, that's not an excellent spirit, that's an oblivious spirit, okay? No, we all have difficulty. Well, Daniel would have been in the same position, the same situation. Why? Because now he has been taken away from his home. He's been taken away from his nation. He's being forcibly moved into certain situations. Now, he could get bitter at the Babylonians, get bitter at the king, but it never indicates he did, nor does it show specific traits of what a bitter person would be doing. I believe bitterness would have entered into Daniel's heart. It would have prevented him from having an excellent spirit. Not only could he have gotten bitter at the Babylonians, but he got bitter at God. God allowed this. God gave Jehoiakim and Judah into the hands of the Babylonians. And so here are the one that I'm supposed to serve. Here the one that I'm supposed to listen to, and the one that I'm supposed to follow has now brought negative consequences into my life because of the nation as a whole. And Daniel, I don't believe, was part of that evil group. It doesn't really ever indicate. He was more like a Joseph, that even when others were not following the Lord, Daniel still maintained that obedience. And so Daniel could have got bitter and said, why me? Why is this happening? God, I was true to you. I was right with you, and you're letting this occur. But nowhere does it indicate there was bitterness arising in Daniel's heart. Listen, can I tell you what Hebrews chapter 12 says? Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Verse 15 says, looking diligently lest any man fail the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Bitterness prevents an excellent spirit. And most bitter people try to avoid. They get away from them. They don't want to be a part of them. They want to minimize their time with them. Why? Because of what it springs out and how the trouble it creates. Listen, I can tell you that bitterness negatively affects your soul. Your mind, your will, and your emotions are all negatively affected by bitterness. Bitterness negatively affects my sight. What I mean by that, I don't mean like my eyes starting to have a little bit harder time adjusting to some of those pages. It's interesting, and you get people around your age, you see them doing the same things you're doing. You're like, I know why you're doing that. And they laugh back at you. I know why you're doing it. Not that kind of sight. I'm talking about the sight that we see life through, the eyes that we see life through, the perspective that we see life through. Bitterness prevents an excellent spirit. Because why? It negatively affects my sight. It's amazing to me two people can walk into the same situation and have completely different perspectives about it. And I know sometimes we say, well, that's because they're a positive person and they think positively. The other person's a realist, and so they think and they see the negative. No, sometimes it's because of what's going on in the heart. And when there's bitterness there, I see it differently. It also negatively affects my stamina. Again, not my ability to run miles. I'm talking about my ability to serve the Lord. I'm talking my ability to run the race of life. As a bitter person, what do I want to do? Quit. Stop. I don't feel like going on. Kidding me? This happened, that happened, this is wrong, that was wrong, these things, this, that. And those become my focus. And what happens? The opportunity to have an excellent spirit, it goes away. Another thing that prevents us, though, is rebellion. Maybe you don't struggle with bitterness today, and that's a blessing. But rebellion is another opportunity for us to be prevented from an excellent spirit. When Daniel in chapter 1 and verse 8, when he was thrown into this situation of captivity, one of the first lessons that we see popping up here is he was being forced to eat the king's meat and drink the king's wine. And he knew that was against his dietary laws that God had established. And so you have an opportunity here, Daniel. What are you going to do? Well, in a typical situation, most people would rebel. Most people would use all sorts of different reasoning of why I do not have to do that. And so they would bristle up, they would stiffen the neck, they would harden the heart, stick the chest in the air, and buck or go against or rebel against the authority. But Daniel, though he put God first, he still remained respectful to his ungodly authorities. We've got a lesson that we have to learn here, folks. We're talking about being in an unworthy environment. We're talking about a boss or a friend, or we're talking about a government official. We're talking about somebody who is in charge or in control of the situation that is trying to force things that we don't want to happen or that we don't want to do. Or maybe that we even know that God doesn't want us to do. We always put God first, and we'll get there in just a minute, but we also still must remain respectful to the ungodly authorities. Daniel was willing to work under authority. That's why we see him making such an excellent appeal to the man that was in charge of him. He doesn't just come out and say, absolutely not, go find something else. He says, well, can we try this? What about if we do this? Hey, would you consider this? Think about this. And what are we seeing here? We're seeing Daniel not being in rebellion, but working under authority, and yet still honoring God in obedience. And by the way, God blessed his efforts, and what do we see stand out? Daniel's excellent spirit. You know, sometimes when it comes to our life, we know best. And because we know best, we're going to do as we please, no matter who's trying to tell us no. We have to be careful, because what happens? That prevents the excellent spirit. Because God's not going to honor rebellion. And rebellion, again, we're going to get to the next one here in just a minute, but rebellion, again, is me doing what I think I should do. I too many times have experienced it, whether it's a bit in my own thinking at times or in dealing with other people and their thinking. I'm right, my authorities are wrong. I'm right, my authorities are wrong. Now I want you to think about the last time that you really were in rebellion, when you bucked against your authority. How was your spirit at that time? I would venture to say, in all of our situations, it was less than excellent. Daniel maintained an excellent spirit because he didn't allow rebellion to pop up into his heart. The third one is pride. Pride. Pride goes pretty close hand in hand with rebellion, doesn't it? In fact, many times we see the two correlated because usually where there's pride, there's rebellion, and usually where there's rebellion, there's pride. But they are a little different in the sense of rebellion's going against authority. Pride is really focusing on me and me being what I think I should be. I can't give you an example of pride in Daniel's life, but I can in King Nebuchadnezzar's life. Look at chapter 5, verse 20. And why was it not in Daniel's life? Well, because again, Daniel exhibited an excellent spirit. But when you have pride involved, it's going to prevent the excellent spirit. Chapter 5, verse 20. Look at here what it says about Nebuchadnezzar. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride. That word mind right there is the same word as spirit when we're describing Daniel's excellent spirit. It's the same Hebrew word. When the mind, his mind, in Daniel's case it was his spirit, his mind hardened in pride, he was disposed from this kingly throne and they took his glory from him. And what was the display of Nebuchadnezzar's pride? It was when he stood up and he looked around his kingdom and he said, look at all that I've done. Look at all that I've built. Aren't I such an amazing individual? That is not an excellent spirit. I mean, the guy was on top of the world. I mean, literally he was kind of the king of the world at the moment, right? But did that mean that he had an excellent spirit? It did not. There's another man that's underneath of him that's just simply a captive in his kingdom that God uses because that man wasn't prideful, instead practiced humility and was able to exhibit that excellent spirit. Pride hardens. It hardened his mind. When it's hard, what does that mean? It's not going to absorb anything. When you try to get some kind of sponge or something to soak up water, how many of you take a rock and use it to wipe the counter with? Why would I use a rock to wipe up water? Why? Exactly. It's way too hard to absorb water. But if you take a sponge, it's nice and soft and porous, and I mean, you go across that water, you can get a good bit of it until it fills up. Our spirit can be the same way. When it's hard and it's not going to absorb the works of the Lord that are trying to do what it wants to accomplish in our minds or in our spirits. And so pride hardens, pride blinds, pride even becomes belligerent. All of those things preventing an excellent spirit. Again, if I were to define somebody with an excellent spirit, I'm not going to say, oh, that's a prideful individual, that's a rebellious individual, that's somebody that I tell you what, they really have a bitter heart within them. No, they're going to be opposite of that. The last one I want to give to you today is complacency. And when I say last one I'm giving to you, that's the last prevention of an excellent spirit, okay? I have a lot of other stuff for you as well, but complacency. I hope you're not complacent this morning. I hope you're paying attention. I hope you're engaging your mind into what the Lord's delivering to you today. Why? Because complacency can prevent an excellent spirit. What is complacency? Well, it's Daniel in a captive situation in a foreign land who just gives in to the pressures of everything that around him. Did Daniel do that? No. In fact, he did quite the opposite of that. Why do we take note of Daniel? Because of his stance. Because he stood in an environment that was hostile to his situation, to his beliefs, to his relationship with God. No, he didn't stand in defiance. He didn't stand as belligerent and hateful. He stood in a way that was noted that he had an excellent spirit. And yet here in this situation, he also didn't just lay down and get rolled over. If Daniel never stood about the king's meat, if Daniel never stood about his time of prayer with the Lord, would we even be really reading much about him? Would you be remembering the stories? Would you be taking such a note? No. And brethren, this is the thing that we're dealing with in today in our hostile environments, in our negative environments. We can't just roll over and let it all take place over top of us. God didn't put us here for that purpose. With an excellent spirit, we refuse to be complacent, and we maintain the boldness that God wants us to have in these situations. And this is where I think we see so many struggles going on. We have the people that are all about love, and they're about caring for people, and they're about taking care of people, and what happens is they start to lay down all the standards and the biblical doctrine and the things that make us what we should be. Then we have the people over here that says, no, this is the way it's going to be, this is the way it's going to be, and they just put everybody to the chopping block, and it's like, we're going to stand, and no matter what, we're going to be, and it's almost that militant mindset. And yet, what does God desire? I think He wants that balance where, hey, we are not being proud, we are not being rebellious, but we're also not being complacent. And so Daniel, in his situations, in his scenarios, he faced the opposition. He stood strong. Listen, brethren, he didn't cower in fear. What a man. And that's why it's able to state it about him. He had an excellent spirit. I got to be careful, because times I get into mindsets like, I don't care. When I don't care, am I exhibiting an excellent spirit? No. It's not very valuable if I don't give a care. And what's that care? Well, I don't care about things of God, or I don't care about the souls of men or women. I don't care about those that are around me. I don't care about standing for what's right. I don't care about standing for the truth. And there are too many temptations that put us into that state of mind that I simply don't care. We've got to refuse those temptations. But there's another idea of it. I won't rock the boat. Anybody been in a boat and don't like to rock it? Some of my favorite things is to get people in canoes. And when we're in canoes, that's why I like to be in the back, because they can't tell. And all of a sudden they're like, why is this boat moving? I have no idea. It just adds a little fun to the excitement. Unfortunately, I got a little too far with Brother Larry in the boat. I rocked it, we went over. No, actually, I think it's because we ran into the shore, but whatever. Still, we both got dumped. Rocking the boat. Oh, no, we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to tip. We don't want to create any waves. We don't want to create any kind of unsteadiness in life. Let's just stay where we can just kind of hide out and not really... listen, brethren, that's not an excellent spirit. I hope you can kind of connect the dots here, studying through this and thinking through this a little bit. This is probably off the page for a minute, and if I get too far off, I'm going to have a two-part message. But when it comes to this excellent spirit, more times than not, it is proven in times of difficulty. More times than not, the excellent spirit is visible when things aren't right and things aren't going right. Now, the opposite is true as well. More times than not, the excellent spirit is really tested and it's tried when the difficulties come, when the challenges arise. And so, for Daniel and his situation, I think that's part of really what makes it so amazing is he's able to have this excellent spirit in a time when he was challenged and pushed and tested and tried and I mean, so many things were against him. And yet he maintained that excellent spirit. I won't rock the boat, or maybe it's even this: I'll remain in my haven of safety. I'll remain in my haven of safety. Man, I have a safe place. I like to go to it. I like to hide there, put my head in the sand if I have to, as long as I got some way to breathe, whatever it takes. I can stay out of the situations. And then you know what? I'm good inside. Because why? I'm not being challenged. I'm not being tested. Nothing's coming against me to see what I really have. I'm in my safe haven. I'm sipping my half and half tea or lemonade or whatever you have. I've got my ice cream in the freezer when I'm ready, and my favorite meal beside me, and I've got a comfy bed, and I've got air conditioning, and I don't have any visitors over my house. I mean, this is wonderful. I've got an excellent spirit sitting at home, especially when the kids are out already doing things too, And then life changes because I have to get out of that haven. Now what's going on? That's to prevent it. Number 2, though, the promotion. The promotion of an excellent spirit. The promotion of an excellent spirit. We got to go quick, so you're going to have to listen just a little bit faster. All right? Can you do that? Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat. In order to have an excellent spirit, there's preparation that has to take place. Preparation has to happen. Preparation has to be a part of our repertoire, if you will. It is part of our life. This excellent spirit doesn't just pop up one day, because you slept on your left side instead of your right side, and the oxygen level is perfect, and now you wake up and you've got an excellent spirit and you maintain. No. That's not the way it goes. There's preparation that is poured into developing an excellent spirit. And for Daniel, we see here that he purposed in his heart, and there's so much to that action. And I know Pastor Morrison even preached a little bit on that verse not too long ago. And we've had other messages regarding that purpose. That's the specific action. It's a deliberate action. It's something that I'm choosing to do. Every one of us should go after, leave this building today at some point when it's the right time, all right? And say, I desire to have an excellent spirit. This week, I want to start preparing to have an excellent spirit. I want the Lord to train me and teach me so that I can have that excellent spirit. And Daniel, though we don't have all the ins and outs of what took place in his preparation, we see him pick up him right here at this point in his life, and he's purposing in his heart to not defile himself. And so there is preparation that has happened that says, I want to do what God wants me to do. I want to train myself to do what God wants me to do. And when I'm tested on it, I'm going to proceed with that mindset that I'm going to do what God wants me to do. We all know that training and growth, it brings about good results in our life, especially when the training's right and when the growth is monitored correctly. And when does this occur? It's occurring right now. We are being trained to have an excellent spirit. And some of us, we should already have that excellent spirit. I think that you're probably always in training to have an excellent spirit or to increase the excellent spirit. Preparation is huge. I don't have time to elaborate more, but let the Lord prepare you. Letter B is practice. Practice. As you prepare, then you get to practice it. And the great thing about practice, it gives you opportunities in a controlled setting or environment to fail without huge repercussions. Daniel, we know him to stand before King Nebuchadnezzar, interpret dreams. We know him to stand before King Darius and end up in the lion's den. We know Daniel to experience some of the things that he experienced, right? These things that happened here at the beginning was his practice sessions to develop him for chapter 6, verse 3, when we see this man had an excellent spirit. Had he failed at this, where would he have been on the excellent spirit scale? A little bit later. Sometimes we look at those small testing opportunities as insignificant, but they're not. We need them. We need the practice. As God teaches me a lesson, then He usually lets me practice it. Do your best to facilitate those practices, engage in those practices, and give your best or put your heart into that practice. We're in the midst of football season. All we've done is practice. In fact, that's why Jaden feels so bad about his wrist issue. It wasn't even a real game. It was a scrimmage. There was no referees. There was no score. That's when it has to happen, right? Why do you do that? Why do you subject yourself to potential injury? Why do you get out in a situation where you're going to possibly have to put a lot of effort and energy out when it's not a game and it doesn't really matter? Because we are practicing so that when game comes, we can do that much better. The Lord gives us these times, these sessions, to practice that excellent spirit. You know, sometimes those sessions are at home with your husband or with your wife or with your children or with your brothers and sisters. And I think sometimes I look at it and like, what does Jesse care whether I'm exhibiting an excellent spirit or not? I mean, he's just my son. He's going to be like me anyways. He already knows, but I can let, we say let my hair down. I don't have any hair to let down, but I can let my excellent spirit down for a moment and be real. I don't know about you, but I want the excellent spirit to be real. And so I can practice with Jesse when he irritates me, when he comes up and hits me, blindsides me. I shouldn't be saying all that. He's just going to do it more now. Now I can, oh, Jesse, you're such a wonderful son. Wait, we can't lie. Jesse, at times, you're such a wonderful son. I'm so glad you're giving Dad a chance to practice having an excellent spirit and developing that excellent spirit so that I can have that demeanor within me that's valuable and that shows so much more. The small testing opportunities, you know, the more you do it, the more competent you will become. Now, of course, that's balanced with the help of the Lord. It's not about me developing in such a way that now I become excellent in my spirit. It's a matter of me learning to work and operate with God so that that excellent spirit then becomes part of my life. But let the Lord practice it in you. Let the Lord work it within you. Let the Lord give you those opportunities. Because why? You'll be able to face it more and more. You ever got into a situation and you just didn't have the answer? And somebody said something, and you said this, and and then you walked away, and an hour later it hit you. Oh, I should have said this. You know, hopefully the next time that somebody else says something like that, you'll remember, I should have said this at that moment and be able to say it. Because why? Well, I've had practice now, I can get into it. We need to be ready at all times. So we prepare, we practice, and we're out of time. I can't keep going because I have too much left to be able to do. Can you accept a stop right here, right now? I know that's tough, but unless you're going to give me the afternoon session, I really want you to get the rest of it in full stride and full swing. Why? Because we need an excellent spirit in these unworthy environments. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for what you have taught us. And though, Lord, I had planned to get through the entire message, I guess you had other plans. These things that we need to hear, these things that we need to develop, these things that, Lord, we truly need to understand and be able to focus on. Lord, there's so much more good things about this subject. I'm excited to be able to really share it. But maybe today we just need enough to know or to choose, to decide whether or not we're going to strive for an excellent spirit. And maybe it's those things that that we've allowed in our hearts and our lives to prevent it, that we need to deal with today. Maybe it's the bitterness. Lord, I don't think if there's any bitterness in our hearts or bitterness in our life, I don't think the excellent spirit is going to thrive and come out. Maybe it's rebellion, pride, or simply complacency today. Maybe you need to once again light a fire within our hearts and lives to help us to see the greater needs around us and why we need to strive to have a valuable demeanor about us, one that is above reproach, one that others can take note of the God that we serve because of what you're doing in and through us. Lord, whatever your will and desire is, I ask that you would really show it to us, that we can make the decisions we need to make. And this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's